My name is Alethea Madgett. I was at RGU for 9 years. I spent 4 years doing a degree in forensic analytical science, and then I did 5 years doing a PhD in a partnership between Robert Gordon University and Marine Scotland Science. And I'm now a research fellow at the National Decommissioning Centre. So decommissioning is the final stage in the energy process, and it's all about restoration. So we want to restore these energy sites to what they were previously before they were used, or restore them to as close to their original state as possible. And for example, in oil and gas, this would be plugging and abandoning wells and either removing or repurposing the infrastructure when it reaches the end of its life. So we're sort of reaching a phase at the moment where we have all of this aging infrastructure. I mean, lots of oil and gas infrastructure went in sort of in the 70s or 80s. It's approaching the end of its operational life now. And decommissioning is quite an exciting sort of area to be in because it's constantly changing, it's evolving, and there are countries that are still putting into practice and developing their decommissioning policies and practices. So decommissioning is a vital activity for our national economies. Decommissioning and repurposing as a whole are absolutely crucial for energy transition, especially if we want to reach that sort of circular economy, net zero, no wastage endpoint as well. So at the moment, decommissioning is an evolving sector and it's trying to reach a stage with particular focus on net zero and energy transition. It's forecast that over the next 10 years there will be approximately 100 platforms and 5,700 kilometres of pipelines that are going to need decommissioning. And I'd say at the end of 2021, I believe there were 2,381 pipelines, operational pipelines around the world that will eventually need decommissioning. So I think to put this into context, I know that if you combine all these pipelines and their total distance, you'll be able to circle the Earth 30 times. And that's how many are operational at the moment, and that's how many are going to eventually need decommissioning. I think renewables is a really exciting subject at the moment because it's still very much in development. The policies, the procedures that are going into place at the moment. So we've got 1,600 wind turbines that are currently in use that are going to need decommissioned by 2030. And 300 of these are going to reach the end of their life at 2025. So we're still in the stage of putting plans in place. But what's really interesting about wind turbines is that 85 to 90% of them are recyclable. And that's recyclable now, which is fantastic. And they've got a lifespan about 25 to 30 years, but as we are developing new technologies, the lifespan's obviously increasing. But the starter wind turbines are sort of approaching the end of their lives now. The majority of them can be recycled. And again, towards reaching that circular economy with energy transition, it's going to be very possible for wind turbines. But like I said, it's a very exciting sector to be working in. The National Decommissioning Centre was launched in 2019, and it's a partnership between the University of Aberdeen and Net Zero Technology Centre. And it's funded by the Aberdeen City Region deal and industry as well. So the idea is combining sort of industry expertise with academia, which is already such a gap and it's such a bridge to create, especially at the moment when we're trying to address this sort of energy transition, net zero. And the overall ambition in 2019 was to become a global leader in research and development, sort of focusing on decommissioning and sort of future field management. But again, as I said earlier, the industrial landscape has changed so much. Again, even since 2019, there's this huge focus now, rightly so, on energy transition, on achieving net zero circular economy. So the NDC is sort of now branched into sort of renewable sides of things as well, which is really interesting. So sort of floating wind field development, for example, is a project that I'm going to be launching here soon. And in terms of facilities, just to name one that I particularly enjoy playing with, and that's the simulator. It's a real-time simulator. So this is to improve decision-making processes for renewable developments and oil and gas projects as well. So I've had a bit of an odd journey. I think it's not just been straightforward. So I think I left school wanted to be a crime scene investigator. So went into the forensic analytical science degree at Robert Gordon University, which was fantastic. But this was a good course because it had such a broad range of subjects in terms of science. It wasn't just going straight in and doing crime scene investigation. There was lots of chemistry, lots of biology, lots of physics, and the sort of the opportunities you got throughout that degree. You know, I had friends that went into distilling and lots of environmental sciences, people that did become forensic scientists, so it was really good. But in the final year for my honours project, there was an opportunity to do a project at Marine Scotland Science, and that was looking at contaminants in fish in the North Sea, which was really interesting. So I went straight into that, and as soon as I started that, I knew that I wanted to focus on marine science. So it was a big change just in a few years for what I wanted to do. And this led on to a PhD opportunity at Marine Scotland to sort of continue my honours project research and extend it throughout Scotland. So I was looking at how contaminants move through different marine organisms, from sort of your zooplankton, your fish and crustaceans, and your marine mammals. And that kept me for 5 years. And at the last couple of years of me doing my PhD, I worked as an environmental consultant at Exodus Group, which is a really good opportunity. I was a graduate consultant there. And this is sort of what led me into my position now. I was very much doing the decommissioning side of things. So I was doing the environmental impact assessments on the decommissioning appraisals, decommissioning programs. And I noticed that we were pulling out this infrastructure of the North Sea that was covered in marine life. It was covered in all sorts of animals, and there was research coming out that was suggesting that animals were actually using them for feeding, animals were using them for breeding. It just seemed really sad, just pulling it out. You know, you had these ecosystems that were developing, and because of the decommissioning process of trying to get that energy site exactly as it was before the infrastructure was there, it all gets pulled out, and it just goes back to a completely bare seabed. And I did find that really sad. So I was sort of exposed to this more and more. I learned more about it at Exodus. I was data facilitator for Insights. So this was getting me into the research side of things for, well, what happens if we leave these structures in place? Do they have ecosystem benefits? Which I already could see that they definitely did from some of the environmental impact assessments we did. And then this position came up. I decided I didn't just want to sit and just write up the same sort of reports in terms of this. We need to just pull it out because that's what the regulations say. I wanted to be part of the change because there's definitely change that's coming in terms with how we actually treat these structures. Is pulling them out the best way of doing it? Can we leave them in place? Can we reef them? Can we leave parts of them in place? So it's changing the sort of angle on how we would decommission. So a lot of my research focuses actually on tropical environments. My industry partner, they have their oil and gas platforms in sort of Australia and Thailand and Angola. So I'm working on rigs to reefs projects in Australia and Thailand at the moment. And my highlights are definitely going there, I have to say, doing the fieldwork. I've been to Thailand and done the fieldwork in Thailand. This is where we set cameras up and had a look at what was growing on the structures. And these are structures that had been decided to reef, so they've been purposely reefed instead of just being pulled out. So they were laid on this, towed closer to shore, laid on the seabed and reefed. And it was absolutely incredible being able to see it work. It's covered in marine life. So I'm actually in the process of writing this up at the moment. So for anyone considering a career in decommissioning, it's entirely multidisciplinary. You don't just have to be an engineer to go into it. You know, I did crime scene investigation and then marine science and moved into it. So it's entirely multidisciplinary. So there's no just one direct route into it. It's always changing. As I said earlier, like policies are changing, procedures are changing. So that's quite an exciting area to be in, something that is changing. And there's also, every project is different. You know, you never tend to get the same project. Every decommissioning project is assessed on a case-by-case basis, which means it's most likely to be different for each one. So it's exciting on a day-by-day basis.